For many centuries, the city that we now know as Seoul has been at the center of the ever-developing way of life of the people of South Korea. Some might go so far as saying that the integral role this city has played not only extended its influence to the entire Korean peninsula, but also to the continent of Asia and the entire planet as a whole. So it must be strange to find that the South Korean government has decided to move from this bustling city to start afresh in a new, more centralized city. Why would they make such a massive move? What are the chances that this will be a successful move? Will it be just another failed attempt at building a new city in recent times? Join us as we take a look at why South Korea is changing its capital city from Seoul to Sejong. It must have come as a surprise to some of us who read the title to this video, but yeah, South Korea has been building a brand new city 80 miles south of Seoul since 2009. Located in a more central region of South Korea, the city looks ready to host more of the 51.74 million people that call the East Asian country home, as the city is filled with some of the best roads and buildings you could find in the country, dare we say the entirety of Asia as a whole. Today, this daring attempt to shift base from the north in Seoul down to Sejong has been progressing steadily, with nearly 400,000 people calling the brand new city home as of 2024. If things go according to plan, it is believed that the new government complexes will be able to host several government ministries, as well as the office of the Prime Minister of South Korea in due time. As much as we can admire the fact that it only took about a decade to put this city together, it does beg the question as to why South Korea thought it might be best to make this transition from Seoul. One would hear of the current situation and think that Seoul is at the brink of destruction or disintegration when they hear of this transition. But that is far from the truth. Despite the message that this transition might be spreading, Seoul is not only still the current capital of South Korea, it is still actually one of the biggest and most impressive cities in all of Asia. With a population of about 9.77 million people as of 2020, it is by far the most populous city in the country. In fact, it has been the most important city in the entire Korean peninsula for as long as records show, maybe even longer, as it was a central stage to eras like the Joseon dynasty to the Japanese occupation of the East Asian nation. Even today, Seoul is currently a financial hub to the entire planet as a whole, as it is home to some of the biggest mega-corporations in the world, such as Samsung, Kia, and LG. As such, it's understandable how Seoul has been rightly placed in a country that is actually considered to be an economic giant on a global scale. It is seen as an economic giant worldwide, as it has an economy worth almost $2 trillion. We must remember that things weren't always like this for Seoul and South Korea. During the first half of the 21st century, South Korea experienced its separation from its hostile neighbors in the north following the bloody and violent conclusion of World War II. One would think that that would be the end of the violence on the Korean peninsula, but the Koreans would have to endure 3 more years of war following the advent of the Korean War in the 50s. Consequently, one would understand why South Korea had to endure 3 more decades of poverty and squalor as they struggled to regain themselves following years of war, bloodshed, and destruction. However, after enduring such a period that suffered through the hands of dictators who struggled to manage a stable economy for its people, South Korea began to make the progress its people so desperately desired. This turn towards progress seemed to coincide with the introduction of democracy into South Korea's political system in the late 80s. While South Korea did experience a bit of a blip during the financial crisis of 1998, South Korea was finally able to achieve some sustenance and growth following the injection of funds in the country from international organizations such as the IMF. Consequential to such financial and economic growth, the population of this scrappy city began to swell. Few may remember the days when this city was only made up of about 1 million people, as that was long ago, back in the 50s. In recent times, Seoul experienced a peak of more than 10 million people by the 90s who fought tooth and nail for it to become the financial and economic hub that it is today. This created the jobs and industries that were able to accommodate the population that multiplied almost more than 10 times the population it had in the 50s within 4 decades. After hearing all of this, one would again wonder what must be so wrong with Seoul that the South Koreans had to build a new capital city. From the analysis of several experts in the field, as well as those living in the city, the answer might be encompassed in one simple statement: the city is getting overpopulated. The city itself is considered to be one of the most densely populated cities in Asia. This becomes especially clear because when one looks at the larger Seoul metropolitan area, you'd find that Seoul is home to about 26 million people, a number that represents more than half of the entire population of South Korea. Once you hear that a region is getting overcrowded, it won't take much to guess that such an area is experiencing the usual housing crisis that comes with such a problem. We've all seen Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, so we can guess how unbearable the prices of these homes in Seoul are, especially for these average earners there. Pile on the overcongestion and the pollution that comes with such an overcrowded city, and it becomes clear why the government might want to find measures to spread out the population of its most populous city. By the turn of the millennium, the government was already drawing up proposals for the creation of a new administrative city that would help alleviate some of the pressure from Seoul. This was when it became obvious that apart from clearing up the choking population of their capital city, perhaps it may make sense that they move their capital city from the northern borders of their country, as right now, it's currently located just 35 miles away from their bitterest enemies, the dystopian and dysfunctional North Korea. We know they say keep your enemies close, but when it's one that's led by a cult of personality such as Kim Jong-un, moving your capital city to a more central location to discourage attacks or invasion doesn't seem like such a drastic measure. As much as it makes sense to decongest the capital city while also making it difficult for Kim Jong-un, his millions of controlled citizens and his many nukes to destroy their capital city, it must be said that one of the most major reasons, if not the most pressing reason for this move from Seoul, was the decentralization of power and finance from the city. Those savvy with the economic and political ecosystem of South Korea will tell you that something must be done about the chokehold of power the city has on the entire nation's politics and economy. With all these factors in mind, the centralized location of Sejong seemed to be the perfect place for South Korea to start building what it considered the solution to some of its most pressing problems. This does not mean that it didn't face any opposition from political factions following the first proposal that was released by President Roh Moo-hyun in 2003. Opposition parties claimed that moving the capital city from Seoul will affect the city's global economic standing, but by the 2010s, the arguments against such a move were soon outweighed by the positives that came with the development of a new capital city. Once the time for debate was over, the South Korean government got to work by investing more than $20 billion into the bare land that would become their new capital city. Looking at the fantastic buildings, the prestige roads, and the fresh greenery that was put into place in only a decade, one can see that the South Korean government was serious about creating a new livable territory for its citizens, while also creating a new seat of power in a considerably safer region of the country. Not only are the prices of the homes in the area a fraction of those found in Seoul, the authorities hope that they can make the city environmentally friendly and self-sufficient, as it will promote the use of renewable energy, electric cars, and other climate-friendly policies in the city. As encouraging as the investment and the short time spent on building the city might be, one must ask if this move will truly work in favor of South Korea and its people. For starters, there are murmurs that the city still lacks a lot of public facilities, such as schools, hospitals, and clinics. It also seems to suffer from a lack of tourist attractions, such as shopping malls and hotels. Consequently, there are those who are starting to believe that there's a chance that Sejong may never be able to compete with Seoul. That would be a catastrophe to a country that is building a new city so that it could attract people away from the overcongested capital city. As such, there must be an initiative or a movement to solve the inadequacy problem, because how are you going to convince so many people to leave their homes if they aren't assured that there would be enough jobs, education, or healthcare for the people moving there? It's fair to say that as of today, it looks like a lot will need to be done before anybody can say that Sejong is complete or ready to take the mantle from Seoul at all. They don't even have a subway or train system and can only boast of a bus system, and we all know how everybody feels about the bus. Now, we can all say that Rome wasn't built in a day, and as such, a decade is a short period of time to complete a city. However, even if someday Sejong finally meets up with these infrastructural requirements, will it ever truly replace the industry that has been established in Seoul for centuries? How will they replace the Han River, for example? This river has sustained the growth and development of international trade for centuries, if not millennia. Factors like that can never be replaced, especially by an inland, landlocked city like Sejong. Right now, one of the most outstanding features of the new city seems to be the Sejong government complex, as it gives the impression that Sejong could still become the administrative center for the South Korean government. As much as it may defeat some of the most pressing reasons for the creation of Sejong, which was to decongest the overcrowded city, which will bring down the cost of homes, it may be best to allow some time to pass while the new region accommodates the government, thereby creating some relief for the centralization of power in Seoul. Over time, Sejong may just fulfill its other intended purpose. After all, those that are tired of Seoul have been making their way to Sejong over the years. Sure, there are those who fear that it may become another dead city like Nay Pyi Taw in Myanmar. Unfortunately, for those who wanted to build this new capital city in the Southeastern Asian nation, they failed to take into account that Yangon was still the major powerhouse of Myanmar. So it was going to take more than building a new capital city to replace the coastal city that has been the home base of millions of businesses. As worrying as Sejong's similarities are with Nay Pyi Taw, there is much to suggest that time will be the determining factor that will decide the fate of South Korea's new capital city. Let's see what the future holds for Sejong. With that, this video has come to an end. Want to see other fantastic feats of construction? Watch our video on the biggest mega projects in the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Until next time, goodbye.